Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of FAB Does Not Wait. Today, we will be joining, or they will be joining us on this edition of the European Fab Lab Network. Last week, we had an incredible session with the US network where they were like talking more about the role of education and how that affected their COVID response. And this week, we will see what's going on with Europe, how they have been dealing with this, what's the new advantages, disadvantages that we need to face, right, based on the COVID situation that's currently happening worldwide. And for that, here we have a great list of panelists and a great moderator. So I'll let you with Romain from France to introduce you to the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Norella. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have indeed a great panel today, and I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to list them and make sure they're here with us. So we have Olivia Kotsifa, who's trying to connect apparently, but it's not working. So we hope she's going to make it. We have Cesar, Garcia, Saez. Are you around? Cesar? I can hear you. Okay. So if ever...
I'm here, sorry, Romain.
Okay.
Look in my cursor. It was like, where is it going?
Okay,
ready,
no worries.
Ready to join the conversation. Thank you.
I wanted to make sure. We have Christina Rebel. Are you here?
Hey, Romain.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you again. We have Adriana Cabrera.
Hi.
Hello.
It's Adriana.
You here as well. We have Jani, Ylioja.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And Catherine Lenoble.
Hello.
Hello, Catherine. Welcome. So I'm going to introduce each one of you as quick as I can, but as well as I can. So Catherine, you represent France today, right? And you're a writer, as far as I understood, who manipulates open source algorithm. Am I right? And you run the Fun Lab in Tours. And during the pandemic, you've been writing about the COVID on the media named Makery. And I mean, this is almost everything I could fish online about you. So maybe if you want to add more, you can. Then about Jani, who I met already many times. Jani represents Finland today. And so his background is electrical engineering. He's a FAB Academy alumni as well. He's a FAB Academy instructor, and he's a researcher. And all of this is doing it at the University of Oulu in Finland. Adriana Cabrera, she represents Germany today. And so she has a huge background as well, like industrial design, media arts and design, and surface and textiles designs. You're a FAB Academy and Fabric Academy alumni. And you're a senior consultant in innovation and product development at Matrix, GmbH & Co. And you're a researcher at Fab Lab Chemnitz. Christina, so your background is Master of Arts in Social and Global Justice. That's a statement. You're co-founder of Wikifactory. You're the Chief Innovation Officer of the same Wikifactory. Today you represent UK. Am I right? Because you're in between, right? Like Spain, UK, I never know. And your background also includes political economy and entrepreneurship. You're a strategist in social innovation, and you're co-hosting this event, actually. Wikifactory is co-hosting this event, right? Cesar Garcia says, so he's trained as a system engineer. Am I right? You're a Fab Academy alumni as well, a researcher at Empodera. I'm interested by this one. I want to know more later. You're based in Madrid. Today you represent Spain. You have your own video program. Everyone knows already, La Hora Maker. And you have co-founded Make Space Madrid. And I think you also co-founded the Spanish Fab Lab network. Am I right? Okay. And Olivia, I'm going to introduce her, even if she's not here yet. So Olivia is an architect by training. She's also a Fab Academy alumni. She's a researcher, a lecturer, and a designer. She did a tour of Fab Labs in Europe, and she started the Fab Lab in Cardiff, UK. And as far as I know, she currently works at a Fab Lab factory in Belgium. So I was thinking of starting with Olivia, but obviously she's not here yet. So Cesar, if you want to start, if you're ready,
Romain.
the mic is yours.
And now this time it works. So thank you for the introduction. You said, I'm going to talk about the Spanish response to COVID from the perspective of Fab Labs and makerspaces. I'm happy to see that there are several people from the Spanish Fab Labs here, like Adriana, Delia, and Matthew, that have been indeed quite active during this pandemic. So just to give you a kind of a brief overview of how it went here in Spain, it all started with the declaration of state of alarm. People were like, oh, maybe this thing is going to happen here. We are not really sure. And then kind of 1 week later, we are all locked down at home. Like quite sudden, everything stops. And at the same time, new things emerge. And one of these things was a group called Coronavirus Makers that started in Telegram. It started really small, like with 20, 30 people asking this question of, can we create and produce a ventilator using 3D printers? Is it possible? Because in the 2 weeks before the lockdown, most people were really aware of the shortage of ventilators because it was all news around. It was like, oh yeah, there's going to be not enough material. Hospitals are going to require this. So this was kind of the starting point. In the first 10 days, the group went from 30 people to around 15,000. Like that, it was quite insane. Like every day was 1,000 new people, and this creates its own challenges on how to transfer knowledge, how to engage people, how to invite people to do stuff. At the same time, there were other groups popping up and starting. And some of the groups focus on the ventilator, but if you try to produce something with thousands of people, whatever it is, it's quite complex to advance and to collaborate. And so eventually a few groups emerged working on personal protection, like face shields, like masks, like all kind of useful things that could be 3D printed, like protection glasses. Yeah, I mean, people were like looking for ways to contribute from their own homes because it was restricted. You couldn't go anywhere. So most people were either stuck at the labs or working at the labs because they could like travel there to produce, or at home producing tons of materials. So as this happened, some of the spaces take a step forward and say, okay, I think we have facilities, we can just work and contribute. Like, I mean, for example, Matt in San Cugat, inviting people to volunteer and to produce locally, or in León, or Delia in Cuenca. And they were like kind of the nodes of the region. And yeah, I think it was quite important in terms of size. So far, this volunteer effort has produced around 1 million face shields produced and distributed. And I think this is quite a challenge, but also a good example of distributed manufacturing. When people have a common goal and have the tools and the materials, they can achieve quite incredible things. And I think it could be interesting to talk in the final conversation about this relationship of the volunteer networks, the role of the spaces, how it because I see, for example, that it's different in big cities or small cities. The role has been quite different, and I think it has been like a challenge, but I think it has been also very inspiring to see most people working towards a common goal. So yeah, that's kind of the intro, and I'm also really happy to learn about other initiatives happening these days.
Thank you, Cesar. Indeed, you're right. Like 1 million, it's a lot. It's really huge. We need to discuss quantities later, obviously. Okay, I'm gonna give the mic to Christina now, if you want to.
Thanks, Romain. So you're right. I have been in lockdown in Spain. Wikifactory formally is registered in the UK, so I'm happy to represent the UK. We have a community there. In actuality, we're in 190 countries, but Europe is a very strong region for us, and the one that I'm obviously closest to in terms of what actions we have taken in the last few months. I echo everything that Cesar has said. In obviously that spirit, I saw replicated across Europe. You know, as Wikifactory, in the same way that, you know, we've supported the fablabs.io website, the online platform with a microsite, you know, both on Wikifactory and on Fab Labs. At the very start, we started seeing project repositories being submitted and shared as open knowledge for people to build on. And of course, at the start, we tried to support them with, you know, informational resources on how best to document. We have a medical guide. I don't know if it's worth sharing the screen, maybe not. But so we tried to share informational resources on how best to share your files and documentation, because we saw a lot of, you know, not reinvention of the wheel, but a lot of times people were losing time in resharing files and documentation time and time again. So we tried to support in that way. And then it started becoming clear that we were engaging beyond Wikifactory, a broader set of stakeholders into the picture. And that's why we launched a new microsite called Our Response, which is actually connected to Wikifactory and to Fab Labs. It's actually connected to all of the network that we try to empower online. And it's been absolutely fascinating, because of course there has been trends towards, you know, who's going to hack that ventilator or the PPE aspect, but I've also seen other really interesting cases come about of, you know, of course, the broader perspective of PPE, including cloaks, and you know, really the maker movement proving, the Fab Lab network really proving their agility to problem solve. So when we needed a face shield for children, because children were able to start going out and the lockdown was easing, so a face shield for children was being developed. But again, there was many medical devices beyond the ventilator that were identified, like, for example, dialysis machines are going to be a shortage because it affects the kidneys, especially through to even how do we consider bringing people back safe to their offices, or to safely engage in the easing of the lockdown. So we saw some designs for the built environment. So we saw like a broader range starting to emerge, which ultimately then around May, it seemed that we had like a great set of projects that we wanted to involve a greater set of stakeholders in understanding what are the questions that really could enable open hardware as a movement to actually build a more resilient future. So we launched Our Response as a roundtable, and we've been tackling some key thorny issues like how do we audit and accredit products, open hardware products especially. And it's been a fascinating journey where we've been involving companies, institutions, organizations. There's a lot of new funding opportunities now opening up as well, whether through the EU or through the the UK government. For example, the DFID Frontier Technology Hub has a ton of funds now available for projects that are supplies that need to take their prototype to market. And my only concern maybe right now, and this is the great challenge for our network in Europe and worldwide, is that, you know, a lot of our initiatives were very much volunteer-led in the first few months. And now we're seeing a decline in volunteer effort, but there's an opportunity actually to see how we can take advantage of distributed manufacturing for distributed testing, distributed peer review. So actually, maybe if there is that risk of another spike, or actually most of the world is actually not even at the spike yet, how can we really use open hardware and distributed manufacturing as a force of good today, in the medium term, and in the long term?
You're just really reading in my mind. I want to talk to you about, I want to share more ideas about distributed manufacturing, something we've been discussing before together. And yeah, let's keep that topic for later, for sure. Thank you, Christina. I'm gonna give the mic to Adriana. Are you ready? Yeah.
Yeah, I am here. I will also, I would like also to share a little bit my screen. I had also, yeah. So as the others also mentioned, I was also very interesting to help also, as I think that it was a huge engagement of the whole community about the topic. And I think that also in many countries the labs were also closed, as here in Germany. And I was trying also to see some alternatives. And I think that it was very interesting to see one important part, and it was to collaborate in between the regional, the local community, the regional community, and distribute also this information globally. And I think, therefore, I guess that this work was stronger in the last time, and especially also with tools like Wikifactory to try to document all this process. So my first process, personally, I was very interested in the face mask, especially because we didn't have resources to produce, and we understand the role of don't use, let's say, that we need a mask that it can be reusable, and therefore I did this mask that are special for materials that are conductive, actually, that we use also for practices in wearables, but actually that are coated with nanoparticles, in which the material can also, let's say that the COVID cannot survive, or let's say the virus cannot survive. And I did also, for example, this small test that is also made by the N95 mask, in which you see how it can also protect, for example, that the drops cannot also pass through. So that was also my first initiative that I participate and try to collaborate also with other institutions also in Latin America. But of course, there is also a question about price and how we can get also materials, because I think that was one of the biggest trouble, that many of countries or many places, they run out of material, so to produce the devices, or let's say the protection devices for protection. So another initiative very big in Germany was the beer versus virus. There was a big hackathon. So in Germany there was different hackathons, and also in Europe, the EU versus virus.
Oh yes.
That also, especially for example, for this hackathon, there was more than 20,000 people together, thinking with not only in the maker, let's say, scene, but also from different backgrounds, and also thinking about not only about the devices, as for example the ventilators and so on, but also in alternatives of how to look alternatives for economical way for kids, for e-learning, and yeah, in which there was like a cluster around more like 50 ideas, or not ideas, but also topics, in which there was a huge ideas collection, so in which we did, for example, this project that is called Call versus Corona, that we did with the German International Agency, the GATE, in which we did a test, for example, for calling in countries that they don't have easy access to internet, for example, in Africa. So that was one of the idea that was as a winner, but also very, very interesting because there are still working on it to have such a tools, for example, in countries that also now, let's say, the virus is getting in the biggest point that they don't have also some alternatives. But I want to also to present another talk, that it's the maker versus virus, and this is one of the biggest community that work also in Germany, in which we did alternatives as, for example, the face shields that we did also in the Fab Lab, and we did also a lot of documentation to the manuals.
Okay.
And yeah, so yeah, maybe later on we can also explain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to cut you, but I have to.
Yes, so I have an important information, and it's you decide if I can tell this or later.
Okay. Well, yeah. Keep it for the beginning of the discussion.
Perfect.
If it's important, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Now comes Jani. Jani, are you here? Are you
Hey, hello, here I am. So
next to the cabin? Okay.
let me share my screen.
Ed, mic is yours.
And here we go. So yeah, from Oulu. And it's not working with Zoom as I explained. Okay, here. So the basic things you usually have, the core processes in Fab Lab, I will show in a minute why they are here and why I see them important. We have around 30,000 visitors per year in our lab. So this has been very weird time for us have to close the whole place up. This is how my lab is connected to the university around us. It's a shared research environment. So the different departments are all connected by 5G or actually 6G now. And for instance, with University Hospital, we have been prototyping different kind of face masks and with the local hospital. So city, local companies, etc., are in this circle. I'll jump over the Shanghai list, but we did well. So nationally, this group called Climate Leadership Coalition. So I'm our university representative in this in civic engagement work group, and this is something that is started by the biggest companies in Finland, and it has a direct connection to the ministries of economic affairs, employment, environmental, ministry of environmental issues, and I would actually expect this to have a big role in the new normal we will have in especially in distributed manufacturing after this crisis. So from national level to Nordic level. So this is a Nordic Fab Lab Network Association. I was founding member. You see some famous people in this picture. We had a boot camp in Iceland, and I saw online also Rasmus Fangel Vestergaard, vice chairperson of our association right now. So we communicate regularly and we share the information within Nordic countries, and it's really interesting the big differences in Nordic countries, how the development has gone forward. My response to the situation was this. We kind of figured out that when the labs are closed, the access is restricted from the users, and the people working in the lab still get in. And when the labs are open, it's the other way around. So people working in the lab get in first, and then the users later. And since digital fabrication processes are controlled by the computers. Whoever has the control on the computer has the control on this process. And we actually demonstrated all core processes of Fab Labs remotely. And this is me demonstrating the big router type milling machine. I really loved doing it remotely. It was super fun. I promised just recently to Rasmus to show this. So in Copenhagen Fab Lab, Rasmus organized this thing. So they provided over 100,000 these visor shields in Denmark, and they had this system in which they had around 1,000 3D printers around them, sending those 3D printed parts to the sort of shipping center that was Copenhagen Fab Lab. They were backed by soldiers and sent for free by the postal office, whoever needed. And they had really agile response for any small hospitals that couldn't have those equipment from the central services or warehouses. So it was really amazing. About the government side.
Last slide.
Yes, it is about the last. Thanks. So Finland had very strict restrictions, and the corona is basically over here now. We are just waiting for the next wave. So there's something like maybe 15 cases per week, 14 cases I think last week, while in Sweden 10 times more cases, almost 20 times as many deaths, and even normalized to the people. Situation is totally different. So 3 different approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Jani. Thank you for exposing the technical aspect as well. I saw you driving that milling machine remotely. That was impressive, I admit. Okay. Catherine, are you ready?
Yeah, here I am. Hello, and thanks for the introduction and invitation. So yes, I'm part of the Fun Lab, Citizen Fab Lab based in Tours. And if we go directly into the subject, so before the sanitary confinement was officially announced, we started to organize a dispatch of the 3D printers of our lab. So members who could potentially print face shields at home would be ready to do so. And then quickly, Citizen Collective emerged in Tours, and members of our lab joined this collective and contribute in different ways. So whether like they contribute by improving files and especially the Valve 5 to adapt it to the need of the different medical team at Tours Hospital. And then also help in printing and also putting together the shields kits to be distributed. So this is, I guess, like the mobilization, let's say, that happened in Tours, but as well as at a regional level and at the national level. So that's how the French network of Fab Labs proposed to identify a resource Fab Lab, a resource person in each region. And let's say the goal of this was simply to facilitate the circulation of information between all of us. So we could share files, information, support also each other during the crisis, and let's say the aim was also to document the mobilization to guarantee the story would be told in our own words. So we I want to say that this documentation, I guess, has been like particularly efficient because we could, in each region, we could easily access to what was going on. And especially we could hear that in different regions, for instance, institutions and policymakers started to bring their support to Fab Labs and makers, so we could, let's say, use this information, this fact, to report it to our policy makers, and I guess this has accelerated some regional solidarity funds in different parts of France. And at the same time, the online media makery got fundraised to cover the mobilization. So we started like a tour de France of every region, working together with the different resource Fab Lab in different regions, so we could do interviews and papers. So I guess this has this documentation and these stories, interviews, and papers has helped a lot to maybe to reveal the Fab Labs and Maker community to a greater audience, and I hope this will help all of us also to go on, as well as it has revealed also that all these labs and communities are in a way little units of production, and I guess this will be also a force to rely on to project distributed fabrication in the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have
Thank
Olivia.
Olivia's back. Okay.
Yes.
She's right. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Catherine. I'd like to keep in mind what you just said about policymakers. We need to discuss that as well. How somehow you make something in the lab or at home with a 3D printer and you manage to make it like certified by a policymaker. That's a big topic. It has been, at least. Olivia.
Hi, I made it. I'm really sorry.
Oh, yeah. Good. You're on.
Good.
Cool. I'll leave you the mic. I introduced you before, so people kind of know who you are now. So you can start sharing your experience.
Hang on. Do you hear me?
Yes, we see you. We hear you.
Good. Okay. So I am from Greece. I currently live in Greece. I haven't been living in Greece for 22 years now. So it's not about COVID, but I decided to come back for some time. And some of you who already know me, I've been a FAB nomad. So I've been traveling around the world. I quit my job 3. COVID doesn't let me do that anymore. So if you like, I can just say I'm kind of stuck in Greece, which is, a nice place in the world to be stuck at. And what happened here is quite weird, actually. Everybody would think that with our health system, Greece would be in a situation like Spain and Italy right now. But because there were certain measures that were taken quite early in the process, there were not that many incidents and that many deaths, hopefully, happening. So while I was here, I'm trying to set up the makers network in Greece. But COVID happened, so that was a necessity to happen. So just to give you a context, there were 3,500 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Greece. Half of them were recovered, and we had just under 200 deaths. There were two networks that started showing up at the very beginning. One was the Hellas COVID-19 network that was a Facebook-based one with a particular 3D printed face shield that everybody had to produce. So there were about 500 makers all over Greece, and they were producing the Prusa face shield. As part of the Decode Fab Lab here in Athens, we produced about 500 of them. But I was a bit uneasy with this situation because although it was a collaboration with the Ministry of Education and everything was really nicely organized, it was very centrally based. So we're talking about the distributed manufacturing, but with a central base here in Athens. So basically, if you had a 3D printer on the island, which was far away from Athens, you would have to ship your 3D printed stuff to Athens, and then the ministry would decide which hospital would actually need this. So this was a need to start another network in parallel, which I was glad to be part of the organization of it. So myself and another 5 people set it up, and it was actually distributed manufacturing, but addressed to local needs. So it was more like a matchmaking process. So we have a platform, a website that we set up, where hospitals or clinics or individuals would require some sort of protection, not particularly face shields, and then a maker who would be very close to the area would pick up these needs, and they would fabricate accordingly. But not just with a 3D printer, but with everything they had. So I was part of the team. There were 2 of us who uploaded files. Well, we were lucky enough to be part of a big network, either the Maker Space One or the Fab Lab network. Well, I actually have my machines here, as you can see. I'm stuck up home, but I have my playground here, so it's pretty good. So I was able to download and be part of the conversations with everybody, and test different kinds of stuff. So 3D printed shields or laser cut stuff or electronics and things like that. So I've uploaded them online together with handmade solutions for everybody to use.
Sounds perfect.
So it was an idea of making a network and educating people regardless of whether they are actual Fab Lab makers or not.
Okay, so as I understand, you've been kind of gathering people, trying to work nicely with the government that wanted to centralize the production of the protection equipment. So I don't know if most of us have been through this process of a very big centralizing power, but I assume some of us did, probably. Thank you, Olivia, for this testimony. And so now you were supposed to be the first, so you were the last. But anyway, we're gonna go through a set of questions that you freely answer to. I'd like to go back in time for a few minutes, and I would like to know if you remember what you were doing on week 1 of confinement, whenever it was, actually, because it wasn't the same everywhere. Norella is still confined, for example. Yeah, you are.
No, we're not. Well, we're not confined anymore here, but yeah.
What about week 1? Where were you? What were you doing? I was at home, on social networks everywhere, to try to understand how we would find a way to insert those local production of protective equipments into hospitals. I had like one way to make something, a place I wanted to send the things to, but I had no certainties that I would be able to do it legally. And in fact, after 1 week and a half or two, we made a decision because we had feedback from some people, including doctors, who were saying that they were kind of actually able to make this choice themselves and for their own lab or a part of the hospital to pick up an equipment that has been made by a lab or maker. And there's a lot at stake here, like the question of policy, the question of responsibility, and even if some organizations who are actually in charge of certifying such equipments were working on it, we knew it somehow, there was no public statement about it. How was it in your countries, respective countries?
So maybe I can go, given like,
you can.
It was quite strange because on the first week when we launched this Telegram group, I joined like on one of the very first days, and there was also another group launched by the COTEC, that is a foundation for innovation in Spain, and they were already gathering and talking to doctors and talking to people, and we were trying to figure out what was exactly a ventilator. I mean, not a ventilator like, okay, we know the idea, but what was needed in this case? What was and even what could be useful, because that was we were reading a lot, and people were like, oh yeah, this might work with other kind of people having respiratory problems, but not with COVID patients, because COVID patients are super ill and they will die with that thing or without that thing you're creating. So the first thing we did and this was very surprising for us, we tried to engage with the doctors and say, hey, join the groups, try to answer some questions. And they were like, I've never heard about this crazy Telegram thing you're talking about. It's like a WhatsApp with 1,000 people talking nonsense. It's like very crazy, So most of the doctors didn't use Telegram. Even for the ones that use Telegram, they were super overwhelmed with the amount of traffic and answering questions again and again. So another people that was quite engaged was David from Arduino, David Cuartilles. Maybe you know him from some of the places. So we said, okay, let's create a forum so we can try to slow down the conversation and try to nail it down. So I remember the first week, what we tried to do was to create the kind of the working specifications, what could be useful for a pandemic, for the ventilator for the pandemic. So eventually this online forum became a place that was kind of gathering a lot of papers, a lot of research, a lot of people offering feedback on different threads. So they could just arrive to, for example, we got these specifications, then we got people working on that specific.
Wait, Cesar, you get that certification, like for the ventilator?
I can talk about that later if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first week, I was reading the daily progress of the forum. So I was reading through all the threads and said, oh, yesterday the team on the respirator has been doing this. There is a new group of face shields. This may take off. It was very crazy. We can talk later about the ventilators, because one of the things we managed to do with Cotec was to arrange a meeting with 45 teams developing ventilators.
Impressive.
And I can talk about that later.
Oh yeah. Keep that on the back burner.
That was very weak for me.
We went a little bit of a different strategy here. We went a little bit rogue, and we occupied a railroad station and stole the power because I was told to close down the Fab Lab. So we just handed 20 3D printers to people through Messenger and told them that we would give them all the materials they needed if they would just keep printing.
Okay.
And so I was sent home for 3 days, and then someone realized this is a pretty good idea, and then we contacted the
Let me understand. Rasmus,
What?
let me understand what you just said. Like you had 3D printers.
Yeah.
You sent a message somewhere on the chat. You
On
said
Facebook.
on Facebook, I have this amount of 3D printers, and
Yep.
you can come grab them, and you bring them home, and you make.
Yeah, we
Okay.
packed a Ford and a Citroen with quite a lot of 3D printers, and then we sort of got the keys to an old railway station and occupied that and just stole power from there.
Okay.
And so that was sort of the start of it for us.
Okay.
And then we just worked hand in hand, and it was just a natural thing, very trust-based. People used their own materials, just helped. That's how we got such a big network running. And then we convinced the Nordic mail system to give us free mail everywhere. So I don't know, I'm not quite how sure that conversation went, but it's kind of funny. So we were able to help both Greenland and the Faroe Islands as well.
So there was a lot of commitment, like people becoming aware of what you were doing, starting to like participate, and then.
No. I think you just tap into that spirit that everyone is scared, confused, and there's a sort of cathartic feeling in the sense that you can actually do something against something.
Yeah.
So we also cut down all our outdoor hedges and installed outdoor sinks and made a packing station and had the army come by and approve it. It was just sort of this crazy thing that when people sort of just went with it, it was just
this is very pragmatic. Very pragmatic.
It went very pragmatic. And then the university hospitals in Denmark, after we started by delivering, that was maybe good. The first thing we delivered was the Prusa designs for the National Hospital in Copenhagen, the Royal Hospital. And that sort of made a stamp of approval that we could contact others. And then we had volunteers, doctors. We just set up a homepage basically, and these doctors just screened all the applications. You could just type into DK Make Us Against Corona, and we would send you stuff for free. And that was just basically it. And we just had doctors screening it. And I think for me that was a big relief. So I didn't have to play God. I didn't have to sort of say, okay, you need this more than someone else. Luckily, we've been in the bonus for quite a while.
Cool.
But it's a strenuous thing to work with the CE and ICO approvals for things. I've been yelling the head of UNICEF and UN for the last few weeks.
Cool.
But luckily, we found a workaround. So we're shipping to Uganda, Argentina, and Mexico now.
Oh, that's interesting topic. Can you keep that somewhere? Because like sending local production so far is interesting as well, because I saw it happen in France to Peru. Adriana, I think you have something to say. I heard.
Yeah, I think that so here, let's say locally, how it works in Fab Lab Camp Linford, because the lab also was closed, they hospital came to the lab, and through the let's say the municipality, they asked also for help. And I think that was a very important point, because if you see that suddenly is let's say the people that is like asking you for something that is for free, I think that it's like kind of a blessing. uh, that you are capable to do this very quick, and therefore that was also because everything until now is very restricted in the university, but the president says yes, we will do it, of course. And I think that it was very important point of the co-creation. So each week, let's say each day, they proof, let's say, a design, and they brought to the hospital. Through the nights, they could also say what was working, what not, and giving this feedback. So I think that it was a very intensive process of co-creation with the hospitals. And for maybe people as me that is working a long time in about assistive devices, I think that this is a time that we say like, look, we need such a process to bring really in an iterative way that people can also answer quickly about such a protection mask or devices. So another important point that here, but that was, as I said, a locally case. Also, I think in another places here in Germany, they went for this very organic and compulsionary process, also about certification, and also because there was many labs and hubs working on it. What it was very interesting is that the government, and especially the normatives, the DIN, they give some normatives free that you could download, and also the let's say big companies could reinterpret the production change, so that they could adapt, let's say, their production, especially for example for textile pieces, or for other companies that they are producing, for example, vacuum bags for cleaners. So such a things were very also interesting, how production also changed in this
Yes.
distributed aspect.
I'm actually wondering something about something. Like, you know, we were like producing somehow. We were fabricating some shields in Fab Labs, and I couldn't stop thinking of the moment when the industry would play its role. Like they would start actually producing shields instead of us, trying to be keeping to trying to be a buffer between a need and a possibility to actually fabricate something. How was it in Germany that has so many places where to produce things? Like it's a very industrial country. So, like a short answer, if you have any insight on this.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, as we said, like there are two things. Like there are a lot of labs, and there are also, especially we discovered that there are many people that has also the printer at home. So many people says like, yeah, we can do it, whatever I can do, we will do it. Also because it was a point that you couldn't also buy the materials. That was also another interesting point. But I think that in the case of the industries, so let's say the answer about injection molding, such a process also takes time, and also even the certification, and to say that it's the proper one. So this process takes also, let's say, long.
So
3 weeks is also long. So
let's
say
it's been more for many of them. So that actually created some kind of breach into the system of fabricating things. Like,
and also send things also, because imagine if here in your town there is 20 people with 20 3D printers at home, but you have to wait that the logistics come until your town. That takes also time. So at that
many
point,
of us have been stocking.
Exactly. So in that point, you see that really distributed fabrication as we are doing. So we said that we have the lab, but for example, now I have at home also I have my mini lab. So the labs are coming more personal.
Yeah.
I think Romain.
Yeah, Jani, please. No, Cesar.
Sorry,
was it Jani or Cesar?
I think Cesar
would like
was first.
to throw something to see if, so regarding to this question, maybe to see if in other countries it has been similar. So, for example, when we got in touch with some companies, they say, "Oh, if this is certified, we will manufacture this," and we're like, "No, it's not." Oh, then we are not interested. But for me, this was even for traditional injection molding and even for 3D printing companies. It's like, this is a big liability, this doesn't work, so we need this to be certified. And this is one thing. I don't know if it has been the same relationship, but there was another thing that was quite interesting for me. There were some people that were selling the designs on Thingiverse for face shields, and they were like, "Oh, this works." But then they were, "Oh, I need the step file to build the injection molding and the factory." And some people say, "No, no, because this is not for profit. Why should I give away this? I give it away for other people to build this, but not to companies to start building and selling." And I don't know if this was kind of a common reaction or it was more something that just happened here. I'm interested in I call this in Spanish descomercial, like
See,
no, it wasn't like non-commercial. It was like neither anti-commercial, but was like take away the commercial out of the product. And I think was interesting reaction. And I wonder about if this happened in other countries. So how was that?
I'm pretty sure like some people would like to answer this question. We keep it because it's a good one as well. And Jani wanted to say something, Cesar, so I'm gonna leave him the
Yep.
mic.
So just for the first week, to be honest with you, my first reaction was to close the lab, and and that was my first job, and then to organize communication with the people working in there, because their safety is my first priority as a director. And it took my first week, but after that we started to prototyping and communicating with the hospitals. However, we didn't get so far. Rasmus did, and since he is here, please feel free to elaborate. But I heard that Lego in Denmark was going to change one of the production lines to make these headbands for the face shields, but the distributed manufacturing really filled the gap until they got there, if they ever did.
Yeah, thanks for the setup, Jani. Yeah, that's actually true. And we had both Lego and Grundfos, which is the biggest manufacturer of pumps in the world, and they struggle quite a bit to remodel that production line because it's injection molding.
When was that, Rasmus? When was
what?
that? When was it? When did they start to work on this? Like
3 weeks in? I don't know. Time has no concept for me anymore.
Yeah,
sorry.
I understand that. I want to know, but would you say May? I don't know.
They quite early actually tried, and Grundfos, which is a huge company in Denmark, were producing 5,000 visors per day, but they couldn't do anything about it, and they shipped only to main storages for the municipalities. They didn't have the distributed network that we had. So we actually saw us both overtaking them in production numbers and delivering straight to people who needed it. And I think for us also, I would like to say something about the Nordic cooperation, that we were in Iceland together, and Greenland is looking at setting up a few labs. And I think it's such a wonderful thing that within 5 days, we had 6 3D printers running in Greenland. And the Thule Air Force Base actually called us and requested visors because the American Air Force couldn't deliver medical equipment. So they called Copenhagen Fab Lab.
So there were a lot of surprises there. Like uncommon relationships with people you had never met before.
But yeah, I think it says something for distributed design, and we worked on iterations because the Danish Health Board would not approve the first thing. So we are not printing the same as Finland or Sweden. We're printing this one design that they would approve. And it took maybe 8 or 10 iterations, and it was kind of nice to see this process, that they're willing to work with us, but they also have very particular local concerns. So I think it makes for a very good case for how distributed design actually can adapt really fast, because it's just sending the file. And
let's create a bridge with what you just said between you and Christina, because like, as you know, she's working and she co-founded Wikifactory, that is dedicated to actually distributed manufacturing as well. And I think
I'm not allowed to do that. I work for the municipality.
Okay. Me neither. Neither for your municipality or for Wikifactory. Go ahead, Christina, if you want to.
I mean, it's such amazing anecdotes. It's funny because, you know, half of our team, or not half, but part of our team was in China. And China was already in lockdown for 2 months when we were forced into lockdown mid-March. And it was strange because you would have thought we would have been better prepared. You know, why didn't we take it seriously that some of our colleagues were going through what we were about to go through? And it's funny because also from a company perspective, we had to close offices far a few weeks prior to lockdown. But when the lockdown happened, it was absolutely incredible to see how the spark, both in Milan and in Spain, from the open hardware movement, whether from the ventilator component or the shields, really sparked suddenly like an absolute frenzy where, because our community is international, I think I've slept less during those weeks than I ever did in my life, like literally 3 hours a night, trying to coordinate China, Europe, Pacific time. It was insane. Everyone, you know, at the same time, not trying to have a knee-jerk reaction and being opportunistic and being really wise and understanding what the needs were from different communities and networks. It was absolutely insane. But then, of course, from like my own experience here in Spain, now you can buy shields. You know, actually, most of the souvenir shops in Madrid have turned into face shield and COVID shops, and you can buy everything. So, but what I really truly appreciate is that from all the experiences that I've been gathering, because that week was definitely an information gathering process, and it has been since then, is really that, you know, the FAB network is there to fill the gap with their agility skills that is second to none worldwide. I don't think a single product company can compare in terms of that speed in actuality. So maybe it's face shields that has been eclipsed by commerce, but there's many other supplies that we need to think about producing. And what's interesting nonetheless in those few weeks, what I was really surprised about nonetheless was the involvement of universities. So a few universities like UCL, Aberdeen University, you know, communities that typically don't necessarily go open source were knocking on the door and be like, how do we open source our supplies? How do we go about, you know, a distributed testing community where academics around the world can have an access to a ventilator that costs just thousands instead of tens of thousands, which makes testing so expensive. And I think that was in itself also a side parallel process I really valued in terms of that academic involvement in this effort.
True. Yeah, and I think if I might just add on that, I think this is the crowning case for think globally, make locally. And I never have to explain to school children again, what can you do with a 3D printer, which makes me very happy and saves a lot of hours going on forwards here.
That's good. I mean, they were prepared somehow already. That's a good point on education. Well, I had a few questions, but obviously time goes by very quickly. We still have like 5 minutes kind of. So I would like to switch the conversation now. We've been talking about what happened. I want to know what comes next, and that what is really matters to us, I think, at this point. I know Fran is waiting for answers like that as well. He's hiding behind the screen, but he's there. So I think what I'm gonna do is that if you make it short, your answers, you can talk several times. And I have one question, like the last one, but it's gonna last. So how do you think we should take advantage of this unprecedented situation for our generation to define new parameters of a different future? Like, it's right now that you expose your utopias, your wishes, any bright idea you have in 20 seconds, if you can, if you will.
I'm going to use those 20 seconds. So I really think, you know, what is highlighted here is that distributed production is the future of production, that we need not have to depend on broken supply chains to supply the products that we need. And it starts off with medical supplies, but quickly, you know, you can see that it inspires a great level of thinking in terms of, you know, how we produce food, how we produce our own energy. You know, we're you know, there's a comment to the phrase of the future is here, is just unevenly distributed. The truth is there's a lot of technologies that could make it possible for, you know, what would be typically called self-sustainable living, which ultimately I think people were inspired about. We were all in lockdown. We all wanted to have like a nice lockdown where we would be able to have an inspiring and empowered lockdown. So it's kind of like, that's the future, I think, being more resilient.
Oh yeah, resilience. Okay, so you had the word on resilience, Christina. Thank you. Anyone?
For me, it's inclusion.
Inclusion?
Yeah, for me, this has sort of highlighted that the non-makers Fab Lab community is such a strong pillar of having a Fab Lab, that we've been able to call upon the elderly local sources to help us with packing. We handled a shipload of mail every day, and we could not have done this without non-makers. I mean, these are not people who are tuned into, but it means a lot for them to have this community hub. I mean, I think it's very important that we take this as an opportunity to sort of see what is actually supporting the community, no matter how you're funded, university, municipality, private lab, whatever it is, you have to be relevant in your local community. And it's such a force multiplier as well when you have to do something. So for me, that has been one huge point from this.
Sounds good. Yeah, the idea of commitment, like acting locally to solve issues, sounds good to me as well.
So I would definitely agree with you, Rasmus.
What?
It was the same thing that started to happen in Greece, and we will continue to do it because for us, we don't have that many Fab Labs here. The thing is that we are not big enough to support the production. But what we did instead is we set up, and this is what happened the first week actually. But anyway, what we're trying to do from now on is to use the already set up platform for inclusion as well as education. So for us is education most of all, because the new generation has to be part of it. They cannot be just the consumers of it all. They have to be involved. You know, how many kids at school, they did online lectures and all that. Maybe half an hour each day could be used to get to know how these things are made. And in fact, from now on, we are trying to be ready for the next whatever the next
next pandemic,
catastrophe would be, next pandemic would be. So we have somehow a way to have like educators. So I'm trying to organize some people who have already built their own machines to actually ship them to places which are remote, like in Greece, for example. You know, there's islands in the middle of nowhere. They don't really have access to this kind of stuff. So actually do online lessons with younger generations to build their own machines, to be able then to tackle any pandemic themselves. So with our help, but without us actually providing the goods. So opening up this.
So we have resilience, inclusion, education.
And let's connect all that together. So it brings us to prosumers. So there won't be just distributed or centralized production. There will be all the variants, as well as distance production, telepresence, and virtual reality possibilities. So it will be a complicated system.
Explain for everyone prosumer.
It's a mixture of a producer and consumer.
Right. So it means that what you're
from Alvin Toffler, sorry.
No,
1984.
It's a discussion. You can keep going right after. Like, I just wanted to point the fact that it means that it's a complete switch, like societal switch. Like, we don't centralize production anymore, but you do what you need when you need, like on demand for small batches. It's almost micro factory system. So
yeah.
Jani, you want to keep going on that? Maybe Cesar. I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering. Sorry, Jani, I don't know if you want to step in, but I was wondering about where does the distributed manufacturing stops? Because this is one of the questions I have. Is because right now, if we take a look to what's been happening in several countries, most of the things that have been produced can be produced at home. So one of the questions right now is what makes the Fab Lab different when when manufacturing is actually distributed. You don't need to go to the Fab Lab to
You're
produce
right.
because I was looking to Olivia and I think that's a Fab Lab. I mean, that's a Fab Lab in your
Mole.
salon. You can build, and I think this is a challenge because yeah, I mean, some people would say, for example, in our make space, we have people that have been working on a ventilator, more kind. They want to call it the Marlin, like the firmware to build different kinds of ventilators. But I'm wondering about other examples of things that can be done in a fab lab, but can be done at home. I know, for example, in Bilbao, people have been manufacturing like crazy with laser cutters, super fast, and this could be an example. But it's not technically different, like you can use the 3D printer at home, you can create faster maybe, but
Oh, you're
do
right.
people want to produce this as a way to sustain themselves? And I think that's the other question, that most people have been engaged on the manufacturing and now they're wondering, yeah, but if the space is about getting together and maybe for 1-2 years getting together is going to be hard, what does it mean? How do we sustain our spaces?
You
And maybe this is a jump in this idea of the Fab 2.0 of the micro Fab Lab. Maybe this has advanced maybe 5 years, and
yeah.
maybe
Well,
I'm
I want to
wondering
let
if this
you.
means the next Fab Lab are smaller or more personal or
But
more
you remember,
neighborhood-like.
right? Don't, yeah, I'm sure you remember, you have that in mind as well, Cesar, that like we're supposed to disappear at some point
Yeah, yeah.
in the process.
But
And
no, in 3 months. That's
not in 3 months, apparently, not yet, but it's part of it. Like Fab Labs are supposed to contract somehow into smaller and even more distributed network of objects that apparently should, according to Neil, should like the one you could keep in your pocket. We're not there yet, but we're on maybe on the path to it, that we won't be useful anymore. But it's the same in France, like even in the small area where we have the university. At the beginning there was like 100 people regrouping together to print shields, and then after 1 month it was like 600 people. They were providing more than 10,000 of those per day or something like that. That became completely crazy. I couldn't imagine there was this force out there, like even in rural areas, that some people would just like dedicate even their own money,
yeah.
their income.
I would like to just to introduce something and then pass on, because one of the things that happened here, there was this conversation of all these people are makers or are the term in Spain is fundidores, that is people that just take plastic and just melt it, or melters. And there is this question, is this large group, out of the 15,000 people, how many people are making, creating, designing, and how many people are just replicating?
Yeah.
Like and what are the skills to engage in each kind of different
my
ways to
fe-
participate?
my feeling is that yeah, go ahead, Christina. I can tell my feelings later.
Well, you're so intuitive. I love it, Romain. I mean, there's an aspect that I wanted to bring up that actually arose at a conversation that was attended by Gaurav Manchanda from Formlabs. Formlabs being, founded by one of Neil's ex-graduates or alumni, more like. And it's interesting because, in one of the prior roundtables that I hosted was about auditing, and someone from KU Leuven, IT Center for IT Law, basically mentioned that, actually the certification of a product is both in the design and in the manufacturing process. You can't really divide it. So in fact, if you wanted to certify a product, it's also in how it's made, which machines and which materials, in effect, what specifications. And it was interesting how Formlabs dealt with that. And I think there's an opportunity from thinking about this way of going about it, whereby because they have a network of fabrication users that use the Formlabs, they got the certification of a nasal swab with the Formlabs machine and the Formlab
Okay.
cartridge, which then gave the certification to the whole Fab Formlab network. So how
You
could
mean
we do
through
that?
the machine? Okay.
Through the
Go ahead.
machine, exactly. So the Fab Lab network has Formlabs machines, but how can we replicate that process of, you know, what is the top machines that we have as a network? Could we actually choose XYZ, maybe open source machines, get that product or a set of products certified with those specific machines, and we'd actually resolve the accreditation issue. We'd actually legally, at least from an FDA point of view, because the nasal swab was only, this is what we also captured, because it was in a session about humanitarian response, where someone in Brazil, because of Formlabs certifying it through the FDA for all of their distributors, suppliers, someone in Brazil, though, was able to get the FDA agreement certification and go to their own government and be like, push this forward from a certification process, because FDA has given a green light with the machine that I have and the material that I have.
Yes.
So there's something in this process in terms of really, if we wanted to actually supply products in you know, beyond filling the gap, actually actually like a micro factory, that we would have to consider. To a certain extent, there's an elephant in the room in replication of design, that unless you have the same machine and the same material, it's not exactly replicatable, not least in the certification process, of course.
No, you're right.
But going maybe a step further, one would have to maybe think about the life cycle of whatever it is that we make, because I'm sure everybody has seen the many photos of different seas and polluted oceans with all these plastic masks and everything else. And I think certifying a product will have to be really coming hand to hand with what kind of material we would use to make it in the first. Where does it come from?
I would propose going a step back, actually.
In the Telegram group that we had, finding materials to finding filaments.
Your connection is kind of dropping.
My connection is bad
Sometimes,
yeah.
or you just.
So anyway,
can you?
Yeah.
You can summarize in a few words what you just said.
Yeah. So anyway, it's where the materials come from and how do we recycle them afterwards. That has to come hand in hand with its certification of the whole product. What that is.
The primary, I think Rasmus wants to talk about it as well. Like following what you just said, Olivia, like the matter, like the fundamental matter we're going to use to put in those machines, it's not coming from underneath my house. It's not. It's coming from somewhere, and this is one of the main focuses we need to have. Like, where is it coming from? Is it from far, Rasmus?
Yeah, I wanted to say something as well, which is something I struggle with, is that, for instance, we try to pretty much adhere to the MIT standard for Fab Lab here, and we still have a non-CE approved machine in our midst, for instance. I think the machines could be a good place to start before we talk about the projects, maybe, or what we put in them. And that is something I really would like to see from the international network, that we get a CE approval for all the machines that we all have to handle every day.
Yeah, actually even the machines that you would be making your own machines, you mill it, you know, racks and pinions, you have your machine working. Would you even need a certification? I'm wondering. But I think Christina wanted to answer.
For me, it's just being allowed to run the shop, but in a public sector kind of environment. So it's a pretty, I know this is very lowbrow, but sometimes we have to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's part of it.
I want to add something, and it's that we, let's say that through this crisis, and we said that, I don't know, like from Einstein, that from crisis come innovation. And I think that one of the parts that we have to say that it's accelerating a lot of process, and we have to take advantage of this, and also how we see that we have this need of certification that would be easy, that would be as we said today, inclusive, that we need processes that instead to make, like, let's say, barriers, that it's more inclusive, a production also that is inclusive, that we need also, let's say, that through the process that we are certified, or let's say that we are also giving as makers, let's say, another level of cooperating or making process of distributed manufacturing, is very important to take the advantage and to see how we could do such a processes, as maybe in other sessions that also Christina discussed also in Wikifactory, how we could put in the same table government, how we could put in the same table producers, and put in the same table also people from normatives to see how we could also mind this gap.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Norella.
Yeah, now we're gonna open up for Q&A from our audience. If you have questions, just post it in the chat. If you're on YouTube, also post it on the chat. The idea is that we start a conversation with whatever our public is needing. If not, Romain can continue with his questions. We only have 10 minutes, by the way, or 8 in our time.
And I have a very weird question for you, like to end this conversation. I mean, you're gonna see.
Yeah, you can go with like. So far, we don't have a question.
Let's wait for some people on YouTube, like for 5 seconds, if someone has something to ask.
But we can keep on talking, I think. If they pop up,
Okay. So the weird question. Oh, yeah, Christina, you look like you want to say something. No, you didn't.
Oh, no.
Okay. So the weird question is not really a weird question. It's just like I want to use my imagination to put you in a situation. I want to just like move all forwards or higher. I have no idea where we're going with this, but I'm going to say it. So say there is another pandemic that eats humans on Earth. Okay. But you are on Mars, right? And you just finished printing your house, like out of like organic bio whatever dust on Mars, so your house is done. But you need to buy a pair of furnitures from IKEA. Do you teleport back to Earth or do you stay there? You don't have to answer. But if you
I'd stay there.
I guess they stay there, yeah. Autosufficiency.
Okay.
So you teleport back to check it out and then teleport back to fabricate it there.
But what, Olivia, what if you bring the virus to Mars then?
Oh. I was quite glad to stay at home for some time. It was good. It was good to be by myself for some time. The amount of noise that there is right now is amazing. You just realize that being in a lockdown is sometimes a good thing.
I like how this is playing out though. So I was with Olivia. I would teleport, grab the designs to see what I would learn from, because at least the designs are not open source, but I can still learn, reverse engineer, come back to Mars. But then you're right, Romain, I would have the virus. Then the bold hero move would be, at least you'd bring back the designs, you'd self-isolate forever.
Yeah, you'll bring the knowledge, and you'll stay at home for a couple of weeks. It's okay. But you can share the knowledge with everybody else.
The 1,000-old newspaper that the furniture is made of. How's the commute to Mars if we play along? I'm just.
These are questions that, it was a weird question, but I wanted to bring something on the table. Like there is a vision of us, of every people around or on Earth to become able to print or to mill or just to laser cut something for him or herself, and being autonomous fully. And we're far from it. It's not so easy to actually realize as a concept, or even to concretize. Where are we now? I mean, like we just proved that a distributed network of people who are not even into industries mostly are able to produce a very, very big amount of objects, like whatever the function of these objects is. Like, what do we do from now, Adriana?
I think I'm sorry. I just want to tell a story shortly. So for 2 years, no, 2019 and end of 2018, we're planning to do the opening, or let's say to go for a research trip in Patagonia and South Antarctic. So to help to found the Fab Lab in Puerto Williams. So when we were there, so we saw really like the need of materials. So like you don't have, let's say, acrylic or like the silicone or such a things there. Also, even just for a glass come each 15 days in a big, let's say, size. So you have to arrange how you want to do the things there. And I think that we start to think about this self-sufficient prototyping. So how you could be autonomous and produce your things and adapt also the lab with the materials that you have locally. So I it was a very nice exercise. And although we do like a lot of experiments in biofabrication, afterwards, and especially in this time, I also realized that we are again isolated for the situation. And how, because I don't know, so for example here you don't find like toilet paper or paper at all, and after you think like you have to recycling, and after you have this awareness of things and how you can start to thinking out to be autosufficient in any case, it maybe in future we will be in the same condition. So I think that that's a very, very important point, that that in that time I felt also isolated because we didn't have internet and so on. But also in this case, I thought that it can go very similar. And I think that it's also a very important part for us how to do alternatives of autosufficient fabrication.
You're right. I'm not surprised you answered that question. Like, especially in Argentina. In Argentina,
yeah,
if you go south,
interesting to see how the circular economy thing plays out in these type of places, especially in Port Williams, where you have no internet, as far as I remember.
Yeah, you don't have
but
internet.
They have a lot of fish skins there, a lot, in especially in Comodoro Rivadavia. There's a lot, and no one's doing anything with it. It's a stock, and like
but
go ahead.
Yeah, suddenly you start to think like, look, I mean, that you think that things are obviously, you start to see things as, for example, the algae, and also resources that you can start to process and think about, okay, I can also 3D print, or let's say to make composites or do some other kind of fabrication. So I think that in that point, it's like resources is coming more obvious. And you think about new methodologies. Maybe we think always in 3D printing, CNC, and suddenly you think like, maybe it could be another techniques that we can implement. So I think that that's important point.
Yeah, that's also the I mean, what I wanted to answer when you ask about like where we should go next. It's obviously like to support circular economy, and I mean, we've been showing that we could respond collectively, being in network, to respond in the open health field. But I think this has shown as well that like we could also support circular economy policy making, and like concretely locally. And if what next could be also like I don't know, simply like this summer heat waves, and what if we have to let's say produce low-tech air conditioner, and I don't know, like for instance, concretely, we could be again makers and Fab Lab here to respond to this kind of like let's say kind of next crisis. So that was also an example that we are already in a crisis, but there are like other ones as well coming.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. And Cesar wanted to say something. He has to leave.
Yeah. I think something that we are thinking about the future and about the spaces, but I think this also made in a way very visible. Ask ourselves, where can we provide the most value or be more useful? Because like Jani said, my role as director was to close the Fab Lab at the beginning. Then you have to think, oh, what is, like you were talking about Mars. Is it better if I stay at home and just talk to the people in the lab, or if I go there in person? And I think this also means where can I provide more? It's like connecting people, is manufacturing, or like Rasmus said, is it better if I try to keep all the printers running, or should I give the printers away to other people? So I think it was also a period of self-reflections in terms of how can I contribute to this? How do I prevent like the risk? By how do I collaborate with others in a way that prevents me from spreading the virus? So I think it was also very interesting for each of us to see how we could be useful in a way for the problem.
Yeah, we've learned a lot on ourselves and on our, like on the people we're working with, like even remotely. We've been spending a lot of time online, and it's very good. Thank you very much. I think it's time to wrap up, right, Norella?
Yes. Sorry, I know the conversation was so interesting, and you had so much to bring to the conversation. But yeah, time goes fast when you have fun. So thanks all for joining. Adriana is going to say just a little announcement before we go, but thank you so much for being here and joining this conversation. Adri, you're muted.
Sorry, I will again share my screen, and I have a small announcement, and it's something that we are working since a couple. So since last year, we were thinking about a group. There is the Fab Care, and we are working this initiative through this time, but therefore now we have this challenge of COVID, and we have the opportunity to do a award, so COVID-19 Innovation Award, that is sponsored by SolidWorks and 3D Experience Lab, and it's a challenge for people. This is like the moment. Sorry. Yeah, this is a challenge that has 3 categories, and in which the prize is 3 scholarships for Fab Academy and Fab Academy. And I think that it's a good opportunity that to highlight such a nice projects, and also people who wants to know a little bit more about skills in the Fab community. Could be also a very good experience in the next time. So that is something that I wanted to share with you. That's everything.
Yeah, thank you, Adriana. Yeah, so this is a nice initiative that's going to be held during the FabX Live. So whoever wants to join, you can find more information at fabxlive.fabevent.org. So thank you all so much for joining. It was a wonderful conversation. I hope this conversation keeps on going and we can find more solid conclusions, but I think it's a good start. So thank you so much, everyone, and hope you can join us in our next session, where we will have the African Fab Lab Network next Thursday. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.